Welcome, dear listener. The night is still, the world outside is quiet, and your thoughts begin to slow. Tonight, we're traveling far, not in distance, but in time, to a land of soft desert winds, of wide golden light, and of a river that gave everything and asked for nothing in return. This is ancient Egypt. Not the Egypt of grand battles or glittering treasures, but of simple days, sandaled feet, and the faint hum of cicadas along the riverbank. Let's close our eyes and begin. Before the Nile becomes the wide, gleaming ribbon that we imagine winding through Egypt, it begins as something much smaller, much quieter. A murmur in the faraway hills of the south. The water gathers itself in secret places where the reeds are tall and the air smells faintly of earth and rain. As the current strengthens, it begins its long journey north, always north, as though drawn by some patient and eternal promise. When it finally reaches the valley, the world begins to awaken around it. Each morning, people rise with the first pale shimmer of light, and the river is there to greet them, unchanging, reliable. Fishermen push their small reed boats out into the mist, oars dipping soundlessly into the silver water. There's a rhythm to the motion: push, pull, drip, pause. And the water answers softly, whispering against the sides of the boat. Along the banks, women fill jars at the shallows, their reflections swaying gently beside them. The air is cool, and the faint smell of wet clay and silt lingers, the scent of life itself. Birds call in the distance, the low murmur of herons, the flutter of ducks lifting from the reeds. Farther away, the first plumes of cooking smoke begin to rise, curling like soft ribbons into the clear sky. Life here is not rushed. The people understand the river's moods, its generosity, its patience, its quiet warnings. The flood will come when it chooses, bringing darkness to the water and life to the soil. And when it withdraws, the land will glisten under the sun like polished bronze. It is a rhythm older than memory, and to live here is to move in time with it. Children learn the river before they learn words. They watch their parents step into its shallows, feel the coolness on their toes, hear the slow song it sings each day. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the papyrus, the whole valley seems to hum. The water, the reeds, the people, all breathing together. By late morning, the sun has climbed high enough that the river gleams like molten gold. A fisherman hauls in his net and finds a few gleaming tilapia caught within. He smiles softly to himself. It is enough, always enough. And as the day stretches on, the Nile flows endlessly northward, carrying with it 1,000 stories. The same stories, told over and over, across lifetimes. Imagine a narrow path winding through a small Egyptian village. The homes are made of sun-baked mud brick, the walls the color of honey or warm bread crust. Their shapes are simple, rectangles softened by time, and the roofs are flat, often used for sleeping when the night is cool. From one roof, a basket of grain hangs in the breeze. From another, linen flutters softly, drying in the sunlight. Inside each home is a world both humble and full. A clay jar of water, always kept cool in the shade. A few woven mats, perhaps a small shrine decorated with offerings of bread or flowers, where the household gods are honored with quiet care. The air is still, thick with the scent of grain and straw and earth. In the morning, you might hear the faint grind of a hand mill as a woman crushes barley for bread. The sound is slow, rhythmic, stone against stone, over and over. A cat whines between her legs, tail flicking, eyes half closed in the dusty light. Outside, a donkey brays, and a child's laughter echoes between the houses. Children run barefoot through the narrow lanes, their feet leaving soft prints in the sand. They chase each other past walls etched with faded drawings, boats, birds, names scratched by tiny hands. Their laughter is bright but never harsh. It seems to blend with the wind itself. In the distance, the call of an ibis floats over the roofs, a single haunting note that fades into the still air. At midday, the village slows. People retreat to the shade inside their homes, where it is cool and dim. A woman sits weaving a basket from date palm fronds, her fingers moving with gentle skill. Beside her, her child sleeps on a woven mat, the faint sound of the river murmuring through the open doorway. When evening comes, the rooftops fill with quiet life again. Families climb the narrow steps to sit under the stars. They eat, talk softly, and sometimes fall silent together, listening to the distant frogs and the soft sigh of the breeze drifting from the Nile. The moonlight pools on the mudbrick walls, turning them silver white. It is an ordinary night in an ordinary village, yet somehow eternal. The same stars that watch them now will watch 1,000 generations more. The same wind will cross the same roofs. The same quiet peace will return again and again. The morning meal in ancient Egypt was simple, nourishing, and familiar. Before the sun grows too hot, the hearths are lit, and the smell of baking bread drifts through the lanes. The loaves are small and round, baked on flat stones or clay ovens, their crusts slightly charred, their insides warm and dense. The aroma fills the air, that earthy sweetness of grain and fire that signals the start of another day. Alongside the bread comes beer, not the bitter drink we think of today, but a thick, malty brew made from barley. It is cloudy and filling, more food than drink, rich with yeast and sweetness. To an Egyptian farmer, it is both breakfast and energy, the taste of home and labor combined. There might also be onions, a few salted fish, and perhaps dates or figs if the season is kind. Sometimes honey, thick and golden, is drizzled onto bread for children. Everything is eaten slowly, with quiet conversation. Talk of the river's level, of the weather, of the sound of frogs after the night rain. A mother tells her son to remember the gods as he eats, to give thanks for the grain, the water, the sun. The boy nods solemnly and takes another bite, though his thoughts are already on the fields and the games he will play with his friends. The meal is short, but it lingers in the senses. When it is done, the dishes are washed in a small basin of water. The cat, always nearby, licks the crumbs from the ground. The family steps outside into the light, their shadows stretching long across the sand. The world smells of baking, of barley, of the river's damp breath. And as they begin their day, each person carries that same rhythm within them, the same flavors, the same calm certainty that life will unfold much as it always has. Bread, beer, the hum of insects in the reeds, the soft, endless music of the Nile. Each year the Nile arrives like an old friend, unhurried, generous, and sure of its welcome. Long before it reaches the villages, its waters have gathered the dark soil of faraway lands. When it spills over the banks, the flood is not feared. It is a blessing wrapped in silence. The water spreads across the fields, slow and gleaming, soaking the earth in fertility. When the waters finally withdraw, the land remains damp and dark, rich with the scent of life. The men rise at first light to turn the soil. They wear nothing on their feet. The mud is cool between their toes. Oxen, calm and patient, trudge ahead, pulling wooden plows that groan softly with each step. The air fills with the low sounds of work, the creak of leather, the splash of hooves, the quiet grunts of effort. Women follow behind, scattering seed from woven baskets. They move in gentle rhythm, tossing each handful with the same care their mothers once did, and their mothers before them. Grain falls through the air like dusted gold, catching sunlight before it lands on the damp soil. In the distance, a heron lifts its wings and glides low over the fields, a sign of good fortune, the elders say. The people of the Nile understand patience. They wait for the sun to do its slow work, for the green shoots to rise, for the promise of the harvest to unfold. And while they wait, they live easily with the rhythm of the world, not rushing it, not fighting it. By midday, the heat grows strong enough to shimmer in the air. The farmers rest in the shade of palms, their backs against the trunks, drinking water from clay jars that sweat cool droplets. A few words are spoken, mostly about the weather, sometimes about the gods who control it. Mostly, there is quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when everything is in balance. When the day is done, the fields glisten with the last of the flood's gift. The river slides by, calm and full, reflecting the low sun. The oxen snort, their hides shining with moisture. And a farmer, leaning on his plow, smiles softly to himself. Another day of work done. Another day given by the river. If the river valley hums with the sound of farming, then the town hums with the steady rhythm of craft. Down one narrow lane, shaded by linen awnings, the craftsman's street comes alive. The smell of dust and clay, of smoke and wood sap, hangs thick in the air. Hammers tap gently on copper, chisels whisper against stone, and wheels spin with the soft rasp of pottery in motion. Each shop is small, open to the street, and filled with the clutter of creation. Baskets of stone chips, piles of wood shavings, clay pots lined up to dry in the sun. The artisans here are quiet people. They work not for haste, but for precision, for beauty that outlasts its maker. A sculptor kneels before a block of limestone, running his fingers across its surface. He taps once, twice, and then begins to carve, the sound sharp but steady. Each stroke is measured, deliberate. Nearby, a carpenter planes a plank of acacia wood, the scent of resin rising sweetly into the warm air. A potter, her arms dusted white, shapes a tall jar with slow, circular movements. Her wheel hums softly, a steady, patient pulse. Between them all, children weave through the street, carrying water jars or fetching tools for their parents. Dogs nap in the shade, tails twitching. From a far corner, the soft notes of a lute drift out. Someone playing as they work, half humming along. Sometimes, a traveler from another village stops to watch. He leans against a wall, mesmerized by the calm repetition, the rhythm of labor turned into art. The craftsman does not look up. His focus is total, his world contained in the curve of a vase or the line of a carving. At midday, when the light grows too bright, the workers pause. They share bread and beer in the doorway, wiping their hands on rough linen cloths. Conversation is low and slow. They talk about the new stone arriving from the quarry, about a friend's marriage, about the color of the sky last night. When the heat begins to fade, they work again, the sound of creation returning to the air like a familiar song. By sunset, the street glows golden. The dust catches the dying light, and the day's labor rests proudly on wooden shelves. Bowls, idols, amulets, tools. Small things, yes, but each one shaped by devotion. And when darkness falls, the last hammer stops. Silence at last. The artisans breathe deeply, content. By midday, the heart of the town comes alive. The marketplace hums with quiet warmth, not loud or frantic, but full of human murmur, like a deep breath shared between friends. The air is thick with scents: roasted grain, sweet dates, dried fish, the faint spice of incense. Beneath awnings made from woven reeds, traders lay out their wares. There are baskets of onions, figs, and pomegranates, piles of linen cloth folded neatly in squares, strings of beads in turquoise, carnelian, and shell. The colors are soft but radiant under the sunlight: pale blues, clay reds, sandy whites. A farmer arrives with his donkey, sacks of barley slung over its sides. He stops by a potter's stall and exchanges grain for a new water jar. The two men nod, no words needed. A woman chooses a small jug, running her thumb along its cool surface before handing over a handful of lentils in payment. Trade here is quiet, human, built on trust. At the edge of the square sits a scribe beneath a canopy of palm leaves. His lap is a desk of wood. Before him lies a roll of papyrus, pale and clean. One by one, people come to him. A woman wanting to send a message to her husband downriver. An old man asking for a prayer to be written for his daughter's health. The scribe listens, nods, and begins to write. His reed pen scratches faintly, steady and calm. The letters flow like water, each symbol deliberate, each word a bridge between hearts. Around him, life continues. A child chases a runaway chicken through the crowd, laughter trailing behind. Two old men sit on a bench, sharing beer from a small jar. They speak of nothing urgent: the flood, the harvest, the way the stars looked last night. Over everything hangs the shimmering heat. The air hums faintly, like a dream. The market moves slowly, in rhythm with the day, never hurried, never still. As the afternoon deepens, the sun softens, turning gold. Traders begin to pack away their goods, brushing dust from their wares, covering baskets with linen cloths. The scribe rolls up his papyrus and tucks it under his arm. The voices fade, replaced by the soft bleat of animals being led home. And when the last stall closes, the square stands quiet again, filled only with the smell of spice and the faint memory of voices. The people drift back toward the river, toward their homes, toward the steady heart of the evening. In a small chamber near the edge of town, where the stone walls keep the air cool and dim, the scribes begin their work. The room smells faintly of ink and rushes, black soot ink for the words of daily life, red ochre ink for the names of gods and the moments that matter most. The floor is swept clean, and each scribe sits cross-legged, a wooden tablet balanced across his knees, a roll of papyrus unrolled before him like a narrow river. The first light of morning filters through the window. Dust motes drift lazily in the golden beams, swirling in the breath of the room. The scribes dip their pens, slender reeds cut to a fine point, into small clay wells of ink. The sound begins, soft and steady, the scratching of pen against papyrus, like the faint rhythm of rain on dry leaves. They copy hymns, contracts, prayers, inventories, everything that binds the world together in order. One man writes of the harvest, another of temple offerings, another of the day's tax collection. Line by line, they turn thought into permanence. And though their work is slow, there is calm satisfaction in every stroke. To write is to bring shape to the invisible, to give words a life that will outlast the speaker. Outside, the murmur of the town drifts in. A donkey braying, a child laughing, the clatter of pots. Inside, time feels slower, suspended between ink and silence. When the scribe's hand grows tired, he pauses, stretching his fingers. He looks out the window, to where the Nile gleams faintly between the buildings. He knows that the river and his work are not so different. Both flow, both record, both endure. At midday, the head scribe calls for a pause. They eat bread and onions, wash their hands, and speak softly of the temple festivals or the stars that will rise tonight. When the meal is done, they return to their benches, their eyes half-lidded with focus, and the whisper of writing fills the room once again. Each scroll, once complete, is rolled carefully and tied with cord. It is placed in a basket, then in another, stored in a quiet archive where the air is cool and dry. Some of these scrolls will survive 100 years, some thousands. The words written today may one day speak again, across ages. But the scribes do not think of that. They simply write, content in the rhythm of their labor. The light shifts, turning honey gold, then pale. The air cools. The pens are cleaned, the ink jars sealed, The scribes stand, stretch their stiff backs, and step into the street. The evening smells of dust and grain, and the world beyond the window hums softly again. Behind the temple walls, where the sounds of the city fade into murmurs, lies a garden, small, hidden, and green. Pools of water mirror the sky, the surfaces rippling softly when a bird lands or when a breeze sighs through the papyrus. The air here is cool and moist, shaded by sycamores and palms. The scent is of lotus blossoms and wet stone. The priests move quietly among the paths, their linen robes brushing the leaves. Their duties are not dramatic. They are caretakers of peace. One sweeps the walkway, slow and careful. Another scatters grain for the sacred geese, whose gentle calls echo against the temple walls. A third pours libations into a shallow bowl, murmuring words of offering that sound more like breath than speech. The temple itself looms beyond the garden, its columns massive and carved with stories of gods and kings. But here, in the garden, those grand tales seem distant. The priests know that the gods are not only in the towering halls, but also in the smallest acts, in feeding, in tending, in waiting. At midday, when the sun is high, the reflections on the water dance across the stone walls. The priests sit together beneath a palm, drinking water from cool jars. Their conversation is soft, often broken by long, companionable silences. They might speak of the river's height, or the strange pattern of ibis flights, or the coming festival when the statue of the god will be carried through the streets. One young priest watches the water carefully. He says that when the lotuses bloom at dawn, they open with the sun, and when they close at dusk, they carry the day's prayers down into the cool depths. The others smile. Such things are said often here, not as superstition, but as gentle truths that comfort the heart. As the shadows lengthen, the priests return to the temple halls. The garden hums softly with bees. The pools shimmer faintly. A single white feather floats on the surface of the water. And somewhere, unseen, the gods are pleased. Not by grandeur, but by calm devotion. When the sun climbs to its highest point, the world of Egypt changes. The air itself seems to thicken, shimmering with invisible light. Colors fade. The green of the palms, the blue of the river, the ochre of the hills, all softened beneath the heavy gold of the sky. The people know this hour well. It is the hour for stillness. Work slows to a hush. The fields, the markets, the streets, all drift into a kind of shared silence. Only the river continues, slow and sure, whispering against its banks. In the villages, doors are pulled shut to keep out the heat. Inside, the air is dim and heavy, the smell of straw and grain lingering from the morning. A woman mends a basket in the shade, her fingers moving lazily. The rhythm of her weaving matches the faint buzz of flies outside. Across the room, her husband lies back against the wall, half dozing, the sound of his slow breathing mingling with the creak of the roof beams. In the distance, the land trembles under waves of heat. The hills blur, their edges vanishing into air. Even the animals stand motionless, cattle clustered in what little shadow the trees can give. donkeys swishing their tails at the lazy flies. Now and then, a breeze drifts from the river, cool and brief, carrying the scent of water and reeds. It slips through the narrow windows, lifts a few strands of hair, stirs a hanging cloth, and then is gone again. The hours pass softly, marked not by sound, but by the slow crawl of shadows across the floor. A cat stretches in a patch of light, rolls over, and sleeps again. A clay jar sweats droplets that trace slow paths through the dust. And then, almost without notice, the edge of the day begins to turn. The light softens, the heat lifts. From somewhere near the banks, a child's voice rings out again. Laughter, bright and small. A door opens. A sigh of air fills the home. The people stir. The world breathes again. The long stillness of midday releases its hold, and life, so patient and calm, returns to motion. When the fiercest heat of the day fades, the riverbanks come alive again with the sounds of childhood. The children of Egypt, bare feet dusty, eyes bright with mischief, return to the water's edge as if drawn by instinct. The Nile gleams like a sheet of bronze, slow and calm, and it becomes their playground. Some carry little clay toys shaped like boats, pushing them gently into the shallows, watching as they drift away with the current. Others roll hoops made from reeds, or chase one another through the mud, their laughter rippling like bird calls across the fields. The girls braid one another's hair, weaving in thin strands of papyrus or beads of baked clay. The boys skip flat stones across the surface of the water, counting the ripples before each one disappears. Nearby, mothers wash linen in the river, kneeling at the edge, rhythmically slapping the wet cloth against smooth stones. Their voices float across the air, gentle warnings, soft songs, bits of gossip exchanged between laughter. The smell of water and sun-warmed clay fills the air, mixed with the sweetness of date palms swaying overhead. Sometimes, a fisherman on his small boat watches the children and smiles to himself. Their joy is as constant as the river's flow. He calls out to them softly, teasing about who among them might grow strong enough to row a boat one day. The smallest children wave, their hands splashing water into the air, droplets catching the light like tiny gems. As the shadows lengthen, the games quieten. The sun leans lower, turning everything honey-colored. Mothers call their children home, their voices echoing gently from house to house, warm and familiar. One by one, the little boats are gathered, the toys set aside. The smell of cooking begins to drift from the village, onions frying, grain roasting. The air cools, and the frogs begin to sing from the reeds. The children's laughter fades, replaced by the steady hum of evening. And as the last light glows across the river, a little boy stands still for a moment, staring at his reflection in the water. He cups his hands, dips them in, and lets the coolness slip through his fingers. He feels the river move, eternal, endless. And though he doesn't yet understand, he senses that it will always be there, long after the day's games are forgotten. In a quiet courtyard, beneath the fading light, a woman sits before her loom. The creak of the wooden frame is slow and steady, almost musical. She works in rhythm: pull, lift, pass, tighten. Each thread crosses another, soft linen slowly taking shape beneath her fingertips. Weaving is patient work. The threads are fine and stubborn, the air warm and still. Her fingers move with practice, their motion as natural as breathing. Sometimes she hums an old tune, low and sweet, the same one her mother once hummed beside a different loom, years ago. Her loom is simple: 2 vertical posts, a few crossbars, a shuttle made from polished wood. The linen she weaves will become tunics for her family, maybe a piece for the temple, maybe bandages for the sick. The fibers were spun earlier by her daughter, who now sits nearby sorting more flax, her hands turning soft bundles into slender thread. As she works, the world narrows to sound and touch: the whisper of the shuttle, the slight sigh of the linen tightening under her pull, the faint scent of flax and dust. She glances up sometimes to see the evening deepening, a sky of deep orange fading to violet. A neighbor passes by, calling a greeting from beyond the courtyard wall. She answers softly but does not stop. The fabric is nearly done, and she wants to finish before the light disappears. Her husband will return soon from the fields, and the smell of stew already wafts faintly through the air. When the last thread is tied and the piece of linen released, she folds it gently across her lap. Her hands, rough but graceful, rest for a moment in stillness. The day's labor has ended, but the sense of peace remains. The quiet joy of creation, of work done well. Later, as darkness settles, the family will gather around a small oil lamp. The flickering light will catch on the linen, turning it almost golden. Her daughter will touch the fabric and smile proudly. The woman will say nothing, only nod and return the smile, content in the knowledge that her hands have carried forward a craft older than kings. The loom creaks once more as it settles into silence. Another day's weaving complete, another thread in the vast cloth of time. When dusk falls across the valley, the farmers return home from the fields. Their pace is slow, their shoulders dusted with the day's labor, but their hearts are light with the quiet satisfaction that only steady work can bring. The oxen walk beside them, patient and calm, their hooves pressing soft impressions into the moist earth. The river glows with the last of the sun's fire, a ribbon of copper winding through the land. The sky deepens from gold to rose to violet. In the distance, the first stars appear, faint and shy. The air cools, carrying the scent of cut grass, of smoke from distant fires, of bread baking in village ovens. At the edge of the fields, the farmers stop to wash their hands and faces in the canals. The water feels cool against their sun-warmed skin, washing away the grit and sweat of the day. They speak softly to one another, exchanging small jokes, brief laughter, and quiet thanks to the gods who have given them another day of labor beneath a forgiving sky. In the homes along the river, lamps are lit, small flames flickering through open doorways. Families gather around low tables. Dinner is simple: lentils cooked in clay pots, leeks stewed with herbs, flatbread still warm from the fire. The children eat quickly, then rest their heads on their mothers' laps. The adults eat slowly, savoring the peace that follows the long hours of toil. After the meal, they sit outside, letting the night settle over them like a soft blanket. Crickets begin to sing. Somewhere nearby, a donkey brays. The moon, pale and round, rises over the palms. They do not speak much now. Words seem unnecessary. A man leans back, watching the stars appear one by one. He knows the constellations well. They guide his seasons, his planting, his life. A woman hums quietly, weaving reeds into a basket even as her eyes grow heavy. The world, in this moment, feels still, complete. The river moves on, as it always does, whispering softly in the dark. And when at last the lamps are extinguished and the air cools enough for rest, the village slips gently into sleep. The farmers, their families, their fields, all wrapped in the same deep peace. The night hums low and constant. The stars gleam. The Nile glides silently beneath them, carrying dreams downstream into forever. When night comes, Egypt does not fall silent. It sighs into music. The villages, cooled by the evening breeze, begin to hum with gentle sound. Not the clamor of celebration, but something slower, older, and deeply human. A boy sits by the river, plucking the strings of a small harp. The notes drift out across the dark water, rippling faintly like the reflections of stars. Farther away, another answers him with a soft tune on a flute carved from reed. The melodies meet and weave together, tender, uncertain, like two old friends whispering in the dark. In a nearby courtyard, women clap rhythmically, their palms making a soft pulse that echoes against the mudbrick walls. A man taps a drum, not loudly, but with the steady patience of someone who knows time itself will keep the beat if he ever falters. Children sway sleepily to the rhythm, their heads nodding against their mother's shoulders. Music, for the people of the Nile, is not a performance. It is a kind of prayer, a language of rest. They play to honor the day that has ended, to thank the river, the gods, and each other for the quiet mercy of life continuing as it always has. Sometimes a song rises, low voices, almost chants, singing of water, of love, of harvest. The words are simple. The river comes again. The fields will bloom again. The hands that worked will rest. The stars seem to listen. The palms rustle softly in the dark. And when the song fades, the silence that follows feels fuller somehow, richer, like the earth after rain. Later, when the moon climbs high, some sit by their doorways, humming to themselves, the tunes so faint they are half breath, half memory. The music drifts upward to where the gods might be, or maybe simply circles back, echoing along the river that has always carried their songs. While most of the village sleeps, a faint glow still burns in one small workshop. Inside, a single oil lamp flickers on a low table, its flame dancing shadows across the walls. A craftsman sits there, shoulders bent, eyes fixed on his work. He prefers the night, the quiet hours when even the wind seems to rest. Before him lies a small block of alabaster. His chisel, fine and sharp, moves with the precision of ritual. Tap, pause, tap again. Each stroke is deliberate, thoughtful. From the pale stone, a shape begins to emerge. The curve of a falcon's wing, the delicate fold of a lotus. The room smells of oil, stone dust, and warm wax. The sound of his breathing blends with the steady rhythm of his tools. Now and then, he pauses to sip water, or simply to watch the light shift along the carving. The flame trembles, and for a moment, the bird in the stone almost seems alive. He hums under his breath, an old tune from childhood, a melody that keeps time better than any clock. Outside, the night insects sing softly, a chorus that never ends. He feels the weight of the hours, but not in weariness. For him, these are the stillest, truest moments of the day, when thought fades and only the work remains. At last he sets down his tools. He brushes the stone dust from his hands, runs his fingers gently over the carved wings. It is smooth, almost warm. Tomorrow he will polish it further, and perhaps the next day he will carry it to the temple, to offer as tribute or trade. But tonight, it is enough simply to see it take shape beneath his hands. He snuffs the lamp. Darkness folds around him. The faint smell of oil lingers in the air. He steps outside, stretching, and looks up at the stars. The same sky his ancestors carved under, the same sky that will watch when others do this work long after he is gone. The stone cools in the night air. The river murmurs nearby. And somewhere within the silence, the world feels complete again. Far to the south, where the Nile bends between cliffs of red and gold, lies Thebes, the heart of Egypt's pulse. Even at night, it breathes with quiet life. The great temples of Amun rise from the earth like mountains of stone. Their columns gleam pale under the moon, carved with stories of gods and kings, of offerings and order. Yet within these walls, the sound is not of grandeur but of peace. A faint echo of sandals on stone, the whisper of a priest's chant carried by the wind. In the streets, lanterns glow faintly, swaying from doorways. Bakers begin their work before dawn, their ovens crackling, filling the air with the scent of warm barley bread. You can hear the low murmur of voices, merchants unloading baskets of grain, guards exchanging soft words at the temple gate. The city never truly sleeps. It simply slows, drifting between wakefulness and dream. Along the riverbank, small boats bump gently against the docks. Their sails are furled, their ropes creaking in the night breeze. Cats move like shadows through the alleys, eyes bright in the lamplight. Somewhere, faint music plays, a flute and drum from a courtyard feast that lingers past midnight. Yet even amid all this quiet motion, Thebes feels still, vast and unhurried, as if aware that it stands at the center of something eternal. The people who walk its streets seem to move in rhythm with the river's own breath. Near the temple, a group of young scribes sit by the steps, talking softly of lessons and dreams. One of them points toward the sky, naming the constellations. Orion, the hunter, who they say guards the spirit of Osiris. Another sketches the stars into the dust with a reed, laughing at his imperfect lines. As dawn begins to hint at the horizon, the faintest glow touches the temple walls. The city wakes slowly. The sound of footsteps, the soft creak of carts, the flutter of birds returning to the palms. And in that moment, Thebes feels alive yet tranquil, a city of stone and stars, forever half awake, half asleep, suspended between time and eternity. In the early light of dawn, when the mist still clings to the river and the air is cool and damp, the school of scribes stirs awake. It is not a large building, just a shaded courtyard surrounded by stone walls and open arches. Birds sing softly in the palm trees overhead as boys begin to gather, reed pens tucked carefully into their linen belts. Their teacher, an older man with a calm gaze and ink-stained fingers, sits cross-legged at the front of the courtyard. Before him lie rows of students, each seated on woven mats, each holding a wooden tablet smeared with a thin layer of clay. The smell of wet earth and oil lamps lingers in the air. The lesson begins, as it always does, with quiet repetition. The teacher dictates a line from an old proverb. "Be patient, for the scribe's heart is steady, and the written word endures longer than the tongue." The students repeat it softly, their voices overlapping like ripples in a pond. Then the scratching begins. The faint, rhythmic sound of reeds pressed into clay, the careful forming of each hieroglyph, each curl and mark. Some boys frown in concentration. Others glance up, their eyes following the slow drift of a cloud above the courtyard wall. The teacher says nothing. He knows that learning patience is part of learning letters. Every mark made today, even the clumsy ones, brings them closer to the discipline of thought and silence. When the morning grows warmer, they pause. Water jars are passed around, and the boys drink deeply, wiping their faces with linen cloths. Then comes the copying of hymns and prayers, fragments of poetry that praise the gods, the river, the stars. One boy, smaller than the rest, struggles to keep his lines straight. The teacher kneels beside him and guides his hand gently, showing how the reed should move like a boat gliding on water, firm, smooth, unhurried. The boy tries again, and this time the sign flows. The teacher nods, satisfied. By midday, the tablets are covered in marks, some neat, some messy, all filled with the quiet effort of learning. The students stretch, rub their eyes, and laugh softly as they tidy their mats. They know that tomorrow they will write the same lines again, and again after that, until they have memorized the flow of ink as easily as breath. In this place, time feels wide and generous. Knowledge does not come quickly, but it never leaves. And when the teacher finally closes the day's lesson with a simple phrase, "The word lives forever," the students bow their heads, not in fear, but in quiet reverence. The river glitters in the distance, carrying the reflection of the sky. The scribes of tomorrow walk home through the dust, their hearts steady, their thoughts already forming words they will one day leave behind. The people of Egypt do not count the years as we do. Their calendars are written not in numbers but in water, in the slow pulse of the Nile's seasons. There are 3 of them, each as dependable as the sun itself. The first is Akhet, the season of the flood. It begins in the warmth of summer, when the distant rains in the south swell the river until it rises beyond its banks. The people watch the water creep across the fields, dark and gleaming, filling every hollow. It is not a thing to fear. It is the very breath of life. The river brings with it rich black soil, thick with promise. The farmers wait, patient, as the land rests beneath the gentle flood. The second season is Peret, the time of sowing and growth. The waters retreat, leaving behind damp fields ready for seed. The farmers walk barefoot through the soft mud, their footprints filling with water as they drop grain by hand. The air smells of wet earth and new shoots. Everywhere, green returns. Barley, wheat, flax, waving gently in the breeze. The sky is wide and clear, the days mild. Then comes Shemu, the harvest. The land turns gold beneath the sun, the air warm and dry. Sickle blades flash in the fields as men and women work side by side, singing as they cut the grain. The songs are simple: praise for the gods, for the river, for the turning of time itself. When the last sheaves are gathered, they give thanks. Offerings of bread and beer are left at small shrines. Children carry garlands of flowers to the river and toss them into the current. The water catches them and carries them away, gifts for the unseen spirits that guide the seasons. And so it continues, year after year. Flood, sowing, harvest. A perfect circle of renewal. The people do not ask when it will end, because to them, it never will. To live by the Nile is to live in harmony with this eternal rhythm. A rhythm so ancient that it seeps into the bones, into the very breath of every living thing. The river teaches them that life, too, must ebb and flow. That stillness and motion, fullness and emptiness, are all parts of the same endless song. When the long days shorten and the nights grow cool, the people of Egypt hold one of their gentlest celebrations, the Festival of Lights. It comes when the year turns, when the harvest is done and the flood has withdrawn, leaving behind fields ready for rest. As dusk falls, families gather by the river. The air smells of smoke and honey, of fresh bread baked for offerings. The last of the sunlight burns orange on the horizon, then fades, leaving the Nile dark and still. One by one, the lamps are lit. Small clay bowls, each filled with oil and a simple wick. Each flame flickers uncertainly at first, then steadies, glowing warm against the gathering dark. The people kneel by the water's edge, murmuring thanks for the harvest, for the river, for the safe turning of another year. Then, gently, they set the lamps afloat. Hundreds of tiny flames drift out upon the water, spreading slowly down the current like stars fallen from the sky. The children gasp softly. Their faces shine with reflected light. The old smile quietly, remembering all the other years they've seen this same river, these same flames. The air fills with quiet song, a low melodic hum. No instruments, no rhythm, just voices rising together, offering peace to the night. Some lamps drift close to one another, their flames joining into one brighter light. Others spin alone, trailing tiny circles of gold before fading into the distance. As the river carries the lamps away, the people remain watching until only a few faint glows remain. The silence that follows is gentle and whole. For them, It is not just a festival. It is a promise that life will continue, that darkness will always meet light again, and that every ending carries within it a beginning. When they finally turn to leave, the sky above the Nile is filled with stars, mirroring the last of the floating lights below. The river flows on, carrying wishes and gratitude alike, whispering softly to the gods and to the night. And for a moment, Egypt seems to breathe as one, calm, eternal, radiant. Far to the west of the Nile, where the desert begins its endless whisper, the cliffs rise pale and sun-baked against the sky. Here, in this quiet place between life and eternity, the tomb builders work. They come before sunrise, walking in small groups across the sand, carrying chisels, mallets, and baskets of food for the day. The air is cool then, the light soft and pink, and the long shadows of the mountains fall like veils across the valley. The men speak little as they begin, for the desert does not invite loudness. Its silence is sacred, like a held breath. They work deep within the rock, carving the resting places of kings, nobles, and priests. The air inside is cool and dry, filled with the faint scent of limestone and dust. Their hammers strike in rhythm, steady, measured, patient. Tap, 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 echoing softly down the long corridors. Each blow brings the walls to life, inch by inch. When the carving is done, the painters arrive. They mix their pigments from ground stone and plants, blue from lapis, red from ochre, green from malachite, black from soot. The colors are bright and alive, as though the walls themselves breathe. With delicate brushes of reed, they paint scenes of daily life. Men harvesting grain, women baking bread, children playing by the river. They paint animals, cattle, fish, birds, and the gods who watch over them all. Though these tombs are made for the dead, they are filled with life, reminders of the world that continues outside. At midday, the workers emerge into the sunlight. They eat in small groups, sitting in the shadow of the cliffs. Bread, onions, a sip of beer. Some joke quietly, others rest with their eyes closed, listening to the wind that slides gently through the canyons. They know the weight of their labor, but they do not speak of death. To them, this is simply another kind of creation. To carve a home that will last beyond the limits of flesh and time. When evening comes, the desert glows red, then gold, then violet. The workers gather their tools and begin the walk back to their small village, a cluster of houses built against the cliffs. The women wait for them with food and smiles. Children run to meet them, carrying jars of cool water. As the stars rise, the builders sit outside, washing dust from their hands. They look up at the sky, at the same constellations they paint on the tomb ceilings. Orion, Sirius, the Great Bear. They know these stars by name, and they know that somewhere beyond them lies the same peace they build each day. The valley falls silent once more. Inside the cliffs, the painted walls glow faintly in the light of the workers' last lamps, their colors shimmering like dreams. And in that stillness, It's easy to believe that the builders' laughter, their songs, and their care all linger there, forever, carved into stone. And then, as all things must, the day comes to its end. The lamps are extinguished one by one. The fields rest beneath the moon. The river gleams silver and still. And Egypt returns to its most sacred state, stillness. The Nile flows, soft as a whisper. It carries with it the memory of every sunrise, every harvest, every breath that has risen and faded along its banks. The air cools, brushing gently against the palms, the reeds, the quiet homes of the people who sleep. Along the river, the last fires burn low. You can almost hear the sound of the water lapping against the shore, the faint hoot of an owl from the trees, the distant croak of frogs in the shallows. Somewhere far off, a fisherman hums to himself, his boat rocking in the dark. In the villages, the people dream. A child dreams of the bright fish of the Nile. A farmer dreams of full granaries. A priest dreams of the sound of temple bells. The river moves through them all, binding them together in its endless rhythm. The stars above are clear and uncountable. They seem close enough to touch. And perhaps, long ago, the Egyptians believed they truly could. That each star was a soul, burning quietly forever. In this vast stillness, the world feels suspended. The desert holds its breath. The river hums its lullaby. And even the gods seem to rest. For all its pyramids and temples, for all its kings and monuments, what remains of Egypt's greatness is not its power. It is its peace. The peace of water on stone, of hands folded after labor, of the eternal quiet that follows the end of day. The Nile glides onward, never hurried, never weary. The moonlight ripples across its surface, soft as linen. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the ancient voices still there, speaking through the silence, not in words but in feeling. Be still. The world is beautiful. The river flows, and you too are part of its endless calm. And so, dear traveler, we come to the end of our long and gentle journey down the Nile. The fields are dark now, the sky vast and full of stars. The air hums faintly, as though carrying all the whispers of the ages. The laughter of children, the call of the heron, the patient breath of the craftsman, the steady rhythm of the river. You have walked the banks and the markets, felt the coolness of dawn and the warmth of sunset. You have heard the hush of scribes, the hum of priests, the song of those who built for eternity. And now, as the night folds around you, you are invited to rest, to let the calm of this ancient world settle softly in your mind. Let the Nile carry you. Let the stars drift slowly above you. Let time fade until there is only the quiet murmur of life, flowing, eternal. Good night, traveler. May the river's song guide you gently into dreams, calm, steady, endless as the water itself.